Hi guys, I hope you're all well, keeping safe from COVID and isolating adequately. My name's Carl, I'm one of the junior coaches at Inspire Fitness Academy and I'm also a trustee. So I'm here today to talk to you about my journey with mental health, and I want to share some, well, to be perfectly frank, some quite personal stuff. But I think it's important that we get it out there and start to talk about these sort of issues, because otherwise they eat you up. And in this series, I'm going to talk about my daily undergoings with COVID and how it's affecting me and how it's making me feel. But I thought to do that, I'll give you a bit about my background. So I'm going to try and be as brief as I can for this. Not because I have anything to hide, but because I don't want to dwell too much on the past. And I want to get into the journey and start talking about what we're going to do going forward. So if anybody would like to know anything more, please get in touch with me through Inspire Fitness Academy, and I'm quite happy to have an in-depth conversation with people. So when I was 9, I started getting pains in my hips that were painful, and it stopped me doing sports that I loved and resulted in spending a lot of time in hospital and having spent time in a wheelchair. So secondary school was less dramatic. I made friends with a group of people, and some of them are still my friends today. And the first time I actually remember having mental health symptoms would have been when I was 15. I couldn't concentrate, and I was getting confused, and my memory was just completely non-existent. If I didn't know any better, I would have described myself as feeling like a zombie. I remember vividly my dad driving me around, no doubt on a way to a hockey match, asking me if I was on drugs. I wouldn't have minded, but I genuinely wasn't. It was just the way that I was feeling and the way that my mind was making me act. So I had numerous trips to the doctors, and I was misdiagnosed with all kinds of stuff. So post-viral syndrome, amnesia, labyrinthitis, even narcolepsy at one stage. And nobody even mentioned that it could be mental health, despite having a history of mental health in my family. And that's just one of the things. In the 1990s, people didn't talk about mental health. And I went for a few years through a cyclic pattern of feeling great and on top of the world, and everything was perfect. And then I'd come crashing down, barely able to function, not able to get out of bed. I'd have to take time out of work or college. I'd be sleeping 20 hours a day. And at this point, I had my first experience with a psychiatrist. So Dr. Farrell was his name. And he said I didn't present with a psychiatric condition. He believed my symptoms were narcolepsy with cataplexy. The subsequent brain scans showed no such evidence. So it was again something else, having to jump through more hoops to try and get diagnosed and try and find out what the actual issue was. So thinking back, I can think back upon the manic episodes. So in 2005, on a spur of the moment chat with a friend while walking through Regent's Park in London, I decided, you know what, I'm going to climb the world's highest freestanding mountain. So 2 days later, I was booked for an expedition to climb Kilimanjaro. Despite never being into mountain climbing or anything like that, I just went and did it. And then cars. These were a persistent change in my life. By the time I was 28, I think I'd had about 15 cars. Some of them were brand new, some of them were paid using overtime that was in plenty when I was younger. And my favourite was a Subaru Impreza, but I only had it for 6 months because I got bored and changed it again. Now, this is now clearly understood as clinical manic behaviour. Children, well, this was the most rewarding thing I've ever done. First child come along in 2006 and the second in 2007. Wow, what a tough yet rewarding experience this was. My 2 boys have kept me sane through all the tough times. And at one point I got an idea that the only way I could successfully raise a family was to move to Canada. Never been to Canada before. In my head, I needed to go to Canada. So within a few days of having this idea, the house was on the market and we were on a flight to North America. Ultimately, it was a combination of this and other factors that eventually resulted in my first marriage breaking down. I won't go into full details, but she was less keen than me on going to Canada. And a couple of months later, I was told she wanted a divorce. Then I spiraled out of control. I went off the rails. Somehow managed to keep my job and got a couple of successive promotions at work, but burnout was evidently coming. And I was going to keep this out of the blog, but to be honest with you, I'm going to keep it in because at this point I entered into a relationship with somebody who I can only describe as did all the tracing and trapped me. And now, 10 years later, I recognise this as an abusive relationship. And I've had counselling to talk about this abusive relationship. And the counsellor asked me to look up 2 words, sociopath and psychopath. And it was for those reasons that I believe I was targeted. I've never really told anyone about this, not even my wife, Linda. But that really screws with your mental health. Stuff like that happening, having to deal with it, move on, turn up to work, pretend everything's alright, raise a family. You're trying to do this while your head's all over the place. It's not cool. I did have one friend who supported me through all this, and she was an absolute angel. I'm not going to say what happened, but I ended up hurting her, and for that I'm truly sorry. And then 2012, I started a relationship with Linda. What started off with a few dates and movie nights turned into a relationship that had become my pillar of support over the years. Since then, she's become the centre of my world. And in 2012, I was in a severe depression. Linda kept it hidden, we all kept it hidden, and only made family appearances when absolutely necessary. Other than that, we tended to keep to ourselves. In another manic twist, we decided to move in together, having only been dating for 10 months. We went to the showroom of a new housing estate and bought this house. We'd not viewed any other houses, just decided, right, I'm going to buy the house, and we did. That's manic behaviour for you. You don't think of the consequences. But in this case, it turned out all right. Fortunately, I got Linda to stick with me by my side. And then around this time, I met Dr. Smith. And he's the first medical person that really started to listen to me and Linda. And he was a consultant psychiatrist. And by this point, I'd been on antidepressants for 10 years, not really doing anything, cycling up and down, going from manic to depressive behaviours, and he diagnosed me of being bipolar. This did 2 things. 1, it explained the cyclic nature of my condition, and 2, it presented me with a new care path. So we started trying new therapies, and at this point, medications, notably lithium, which I can only describe as a miracle drug for me. It takes off the peaks and the troughs of my moods and helps me keep sane. It was also around this time that I sent to the Sheffield Adult Autism Centre. So there was conversations going on between Linda and Dr. Smith that suggested there may be something else going on. I don't know why, but I was seen very quickly. And to be fair, my attitude was to go there to prove that I was normal and there was nothing wrong with me. At the end of a full day assessment centre, I got diagnosed as having high functioning autism. So if you ever want to go to a casino, guys, I'm your man. In fact, only a few people actually know this. I've not really told anybody, and here I am talking about it. So it's quite scary. Then 2018 was a really bad year. I had a complete mental breakdown. I was going through some difficult times at work, and I just couldn't cope. I couldn't cope with anything. And to be fair, looking back at it now, one of the reasons that I pulled out of it was thanks to Gareth Southgate, because him and his men brought the whole nation up for a brief moment in the summer of 2018, me included. I wasn't drinking, I wasn't partying, but I was watching the football, and it made me feel brilliant. It really helped with my mood. Had to have some time off work. Wasn't what I wanted to be doing. One of the things that I've always done when I've been going through these times was continue working, but this, I just couldn't cope. I was making mistakes and generally wasn't feeling very good. So that's me.